emotions, how are you? Welcome to another Money Magic podcast. So today I wanted to talk about my experience at Vipassana. Many people have been asking me to talk about Vipassana and to share my experience. I think I shared a video on TikTok, just a reel, where I was showing what Dhammapataka looks like, which is the Vipassana Center in Worcester, the Western Cape. So for most people, that's in Cape Town, basically. It's an hour away from the city center, about 90 minutes from the city center. And people started asking me and sending messages and saying, please, do a whole video or podcast episode sharing with us what it's like to go to Vipassana. I guess people are very interested in experiencing Vipassana, and people also wanted to know what are the shifts that I have seen since I've gone to Vipassana. So this current sit at Vipassana was my 6th sit. This is outside of serving for 10 days. So I don't know how often I've served at Vipassana. I love to go and serve at different centers. So let me just rewind and just say, before I rewind though, and tell you guys my experience of Vipassana and doing Vipassana, let me say this was the 6th or 7th, 10th day sit. I'm not sure. It's one of those. It's between 6th and 7th, 10th day sit that I've had at Vipassana. What that means is that I went to sit for 10 days in silence. You take a vow of silence for 10 days. You don't talk for 10 days. You just meditate. You spend about 10 to 12 hours a day in just meditation. And it's just you, yourself, your thoughts, the sensations in your body, and your breath. And so this is the 6th time I do it, but let me start from the very beginning because people want to know why I keep going back to Vipassana and how I got into Vipassana and how Vipassana has changed my life. First, let me start by saying that Vipassana, most people freak out about the 10 days of silence, right? I promise you that is the least of your worry. You want the silence when you do Vipassana. So the year was 2011. I went to my first Vipassana sit. I think it was in 2011 or 2012. Let me think. Yes, it was in 2011 because in 2012, I was still living in the US at the time. I was living in Boston, Massachusetts. And in 2012, I moved back to South Africa. And that was a direct result of Vipassana. And so I went to Vipassana in 2011 because from around about the end of 2008, I graduated from the MBA program at Simmons School of Management in Boston, Massachusetts. And around about September, October, I started really dealing a little bit with panic attacks, and my panic attacks were linked to money, but they were also linked to my family dynamics. But a lot of it was around money, right? And I could feel depression coming on. By 2009, I was struggling to get out of bed. 2010, I was really, really going through it, trying to get out of bed, in a relationship, just doing a lot of things, and really, really struggling with my life. And I remembered in 2009, I had hosted a lunch for some friends, and some friends had come over and told me about this thing called Vipassana, but I did not remember the word Vipassana, right? I just remembered they said that you do 10 days of meditation, sitting in silence, and that it helps you, and that it was incredible. And I was like, oh my gosh, note to self, store it in your brain. So in the end of 2010, I started thinking about this really seriously. Then I asked for details but they were fully booked and they could only take me, I could only get a spot in April 2011 in Massachusetts, right? So I was like, okay, cool, I'll take it, you know. And then I went to my first sit, but before I went there, I had, so this is a trigger warning, right? I was very suicidal. I had suicidal ideation. And before I went to Vipassana, I went to see a tarot reader. His name was Raymond. And Raymond said to me, you know, I can tell that you're depressed. I'm looking at the cards. I can tell that you're depressed and you're probably thinking of taking your own life. And at that time, I had it all planned in my head, you know, how I was going to leave this world. And he said to me, don't do anything. You're going to go somewhere in April. I see you going on a retreat and you're going to come out of there and you are going to be a changed person. Your life is going to change. Now, this is something that I could not have imagined because I struggled with depression. I had struggled with depression since my teens. Since the time I was 14, I'd been struggling to find the will to live, right? So this guy tells me round about my 28th birthday, I'm going to go to this place, go to this retreat center, and I'm going to come out and life is going to look different. And I was thinking to myself, what the hell? You know, like, I have been in therapy, I've been trying all of the things, right? How is this going to help? And but like Raymond was one of those sincere tarot readers. So I listened and I was like, well, what hurt or what harm will it do for me to go on this retreat and just give this a chance, right? Because when he's looking at the cards and when astrologers were looking at my chart, like things seemed to turn around for me, you know? So I was like, okay, cool. And these friends of mine that had told me about this place had said something that I now tell everyone when they go to Vipassana. They said, follow the rules to the T. Every time there's meditation, go to the hall and meditate, right? Meditate every single moment or hour that they have a space for meditation. You go there and you go and you meditate and you take this seriously, right? Follow the instructions. Don't try to bring your own thing into being. Just follow everything. Like no talking. Don't try to talk. There's no reading, no writing. You can't take a journal. You can't take any books. So they just said to me, just follow everything that is put forth as an instruction. When you come out of there, you will then judge for yourself. At least give the practice a fair chance, right? So I did that. I did exactly that, right? The first time I went to Vipassana in 2011, I went in, just followed the instructions. Things were really, really bad. I went there with so much of my life falling apart. I mean, my mom had gone through a traumatic incident. My sister had gone through a traumatic incident. Like my family had gone through a traumatic incident. Like I had lost my paternal grandmother just like 2 years before. I was broke. I had just broken off an engagement when I went there. It was, you know, when you go to a place and everything in your life is like, whatever, like up in the air. But I went there and I did exactly as my friend said. On day 6, I started throwing up acid. Like I remember going to the bathroom and I was throwing out pure water, but it was burning me, right? And at the time I was struggling with panic attacks. I was struggling with acid reflux. All I could do was go into states of panic and I would sob loudly during the sits, what's called aditan, sittings of aditan, which is like sittings of strong will, right? Which you sit for an hour, 3 times a day during Vipassana, and you're not allowed to move. So these sittings start after like 4 days on day 4, right? And you're not allowed to move. You're encouraged not to go to the bathroom. Basically, you're learning how to sit still. Like be like a statue for like an hour. And I would then just go so deep and start crying. And I was like, oh my gosh. But I also started to notice, this is how Heart, Mind, and Money, my first book, was born, right? I started to really notice like, oh wow, there's nothing happening in my environment. I'm just sitting here, but my mind is just focused on everything to do with money. And I have so many emotions around money. And not only that, every time I have a particular emotion, there's a sensation in my body, but then there's like also memories that go with it. And then things started to almost like make sense. I could start to see, oh, this is what Goenkaji, who's the teacher for Vipassana, speaks about, which is the habit pattern of my mind. Oh, my mind has this habit pattern, especially when money is concerned. And that's when I started to have these aha moments around money and trauma, Like I had never heard of the words trauma. I had read on emotional intelligence. I had no clue what emotional intelligence was. I literally went to Vipassana not knowing a single thing about meditation, which is perfect. Vipassana is really the perfect place to go there without any of that. And I'm so grateful that like I went there without great intellectual knowledge on meditation and theories on Buddhism and things. I knew about Buddhism because at the time I was practicing Nichiren Buddhism, but I was not very intellectual. I've always been that person that's like a seeker of, I am going to embody and try a thing and then come up with the theories and then go to research on it. And that's how I've always operated, even as a traveler. Like I don't read up on any country. So I literally land in a country and not even know the capital of a country. So it was the same with Vipassana. I arrived in Vipassana and I had no clue what this was about. I had zero idea what to expect, right? I just had my friends that were like, this is going to be amazing for you. We recommend it and just follow the instructions. And I just followed instructions. So because I didn't know the theory, it was perfect for me because I could have my own experience without knowing what to expect. I had never even Googled Vipassana, by the way. I don't know, that's just me. And so when I walked in, I had no idea what to expect. But by day 8 or day 9, the morning of day 8 or the morning of day 9 in Massachusetts, the center there has little cells for meditators. So they'll give you a cell. So I think by day 6 or day 7, you can go to a cell and you can go meditate. So I think it must have been like 4 a.m. in the morning because that's when we start meditating. And it must have been like day 8. I start meditating and I feel this insane peace come over me, I don't know how to explain it. It was just like something from deep within me that's like a stillness. And even now when I'm upset, I get angry, I get anxious, that stillness has never quite left me, And it was a peace, it was a feeling that I'd never ever felt in my life before, which was just this feeling of things are going to be okay, that it's going to be okay, even if it's not okay, and even if you pass on. Like, I just had this feeling that even death is okay, that all is okay, and I can't explain it. And it was just this weird peace in my spirit, and it's incredible because this was in 2011 and it's now 2024. And that feeling, yes, it leaves me, like I forget about it. I don't think it ever has left me, but I'll forget about it. But when things are going haywire, somehow like I'll come back into meditation and I'll feel that, and it will be just okay, and it just has never left me. And I'm so grateful because so much has happened in my life in the last few years. I would say between 2022 and 2023, so much happened in my world. And I think that if I didn't have this practice of Vipassana, and maybe if I'd never had that come over me, I might have lost so much of my center, so much of my balance, so much of my mental health, right? So that's the first thing that happened for me. And I remember that so clearly on day 8, just sitting in that cell and just going with that for weeks on end, that being my predominant emotion. And by day 10, I was just like crying in gratitude that I found this practice. Nothing, remember, I'm still not talking. I've still got the vow of silence. Nothing has really changed in my world at this point. I haven't gone out to the outside world. So I don't know if I'm still struggling with depression. I don't know if I'm still having panic attacks. I don't know any of that. But somehow I knew by day 10, when Vipassana was ending, that like I had found a practice that I'd been looking for my whole life. I've always been a spiritual seeker. When I was in university, I converted to Hinduism for a while, and I've been Nichiren Buddhist. I've tried so many spiritual practices. I tried Catholicism. I tried, oh my gosh, so many different practices. I've done a lot of things in my life. And I think part of it has been trying to connect with the divine, trying to understand things at a deeper level. That for me has always been a thing that has been very, very important to my world, But also when a spiritual practice no longer worked for me, I would just say, it doesn't work for me. I was honest enough to just let it go. I would just know in my spirit. And that had never happened to me when I found Vipassana, where I was like, this is the thing that I'm looking for, It's not the outside results that I thought I was looking for. It was this feeling of strength, this feeling of inner peace, and this feeling of being okay with things falling apart, which at that point they still were. So anyway, I get out of Vipassana, and the first thing that really hits me is that I have to go buy groceries, obviously, when I come back home. And after Vipassana, and I'm not having a panic attack around money. In fact, I'm very neutral around money. So at first I was like, okay, we'll see. I approach this with trepidation, right? It's like, we'll see how I respond. And I'm thinking the euphoria is going to wear off, like the depression is going to come back because I still don't have a job. I still don't have any of these things. So I continue, and weeks go by, months go by, and eventually years go by, and no more depression, no more panic attacks around money, right? But not only that, like a few months afterwards, I sit down and I decide I want to get a life coach. A friend of mine tells me about a life coach who is Joe Nsebeza, right? I often talk about Joe, and she ends up being my very first life coach and just completely changes my world, because she's also got a very strong Buddhist practice, but like she helps me start to embody the principles, but then she also teaches me really deep coaching things, right? And she leaves me exercises to do as homework. But every time I come back to the coaching sessions, I come back with my own new exercises that I've developed. And she's like, I think you could coach, I could train you to do this, but you're coming up with exercises and you're coming up with things to help you heal, and it's working. So maybe this is stuff that you can work with other people on. So then I start taking on coaching clients for free for about 6 months. I coach certain clients for testimonials to see if my work really is working. And it just opens up a whole new journey. Next thing I know, I'm writing a book. I work on getting out of my writer's block, because at that time, during the depression and the panic attacks with money, I started developing deep writer's block. So I started doing lots and lots of EFT tapping on writer's block, and I start writing again, But this time I started writing a book, and before I know it, I'm a published author. Before I know it, I moved back to South Africa to write the book seriously at my mother's place, and then I become a published author, right? And like things start to shift in my world. Within like another 3 years, I pay off $60,000 in debt. Things just start to move in my world, and things start to shift. So that's one thing, right, of how Vipassana started to change things for me. But the other thing, which I think that is not tangible, but actually was one of the most impactful things for me when I started Vipassana, was the very next few months, I started doing deeper work in coaching, right, with my coach, who was Joe at the time, around my family dynamics, right? I had been traveling at that point for about, I started traveling. So this was 2011. I had started traveling in 2005. So about 6 years. And I had not, in those 6 years, I had gone home maybe twice for maybe a week at a time, just to get my stuff sorted so that I could go to the next destination. I had been traveling for years. So in 2012, which was the 7th year of me being a nomad and traveling, I made the decision to move back home. I had actually not even lived at home since the year 2000, right? So for 12 years, my family had maybe seen me like 5, 6 times, and in those times, maybe for like a week at a time. They'd actually really never seen me. They'd never gotten to know me. They really didn't know me, because I had such deep issues with my family. So I then just out of the blue make this decision that I want to move back home. I'm not just going to move back home. I'm going to move back home for the whole of 2012. And that's literally what happened. I'm going to move back home. I'm going to stay home and write and get to know everyone, extended family, everyone in my family. And I'm going to tell the truth and be vulnerable and let people ask me any question and get people to get to truly know me, to see me every day, to get to know me. And I'm going to live with my aunt, and I'm going to live with my mom, right? And just be home. And really people were like, what is happening? And that's what I did. And it completely transformed my relationship with my family, right? Like I had left home in my teens, really angry, really upset. And then I decided to go home as a way of healing deep trauma, deep wounds of abuse, and just living there. And that's what I did in 2012. And it was really life-changing. I feel like this is how my book, What's Your Money Personality? Changing the Way Black Families Manage Their Finances, really started to come about, because I started to share my money story, my money journey with my family, which was great, because when Heart, Mind and Money got published the next year in 2013, I did a lot of media interviews, something I had never expected, right? And I would talk about my family stuff and family dynamics, and just share my story. But my family could see what I was sharing, and they knew that I was talking from the heart and from truth, and that there was no malice. So they've never ever tried to stop me from talking about my story, sharing my story, sharing some of the conversations. Obviously, I always try to share from a space of truth and authenticity and what really happened. And if they are involved in the story, I will let them know, listen, I'm going to be sharing this. Are you okay with it? Right? So that for me was actually one of the most wow moments. Was up until then, I didn't know that you could heal from trauma, and I didn't know how these meditations would work, how a Vipassana would work in terms of meditation. And I think being home also allowed me to develop the Money Magic course later on, because I started developing meditations just for myself, because I could see the triggers that I was going through at home. And I was like, and I made the decision that I'm not going to address certain things until I have worked on myself. And in certain things, it just felt like, oh, I don't need to address them anymore because I've worked through them in the meditations. Some things I wanted to address them more deeply because, well, it would make a difference if I address them. But I learned so much about healing, and healing in the place where you have been wounded. I don't usually recommend that for people, right? Because I really do believe that it helps when you have left a place to heal. And I feel like me traveling was part of my healing journey, right? So since I'd been traveling, and since the 2001 to 2004, I had lived in Cape Town. And in 2005, I left for the US, for Florida. And then I worked on a cruise line. And then I went to the UK, then I went to Trinidad and Tobago, then I went back to the UK, then I went to the Czech Republic, went back to the UK, went back to the US and Boston this time. And it was just like traveling. I feel like that traveling and all that movement was me in a way trying to heal, and that living in Boston and doing the meditations, doing Vipassana, and then doing the inner work that I started to do in coaching, that was really pivotal for me to be able to go back home, because I also had the tools. And then I also went back and I had another EFT tapping coach at home, and I was able to do the work. But without Vipassana, I don't know if I would have ever made the decision to move back home. I don't know if I would have made the decision to say, listen, I'm ready to dig deeper into my inner work and start hiring coaches. At least for me, because like I said, I was a seeker in terms of spirituality, but I don't think the spiritual practices that I was engaging in were actually giving me practical tools, like how to get into my body, how to sit with my breath. It was more about worshiping and, really like maybe following a path of worship, which I guess is really important for some people. But for me, in terms of personality, I've learned that that is not me. Like, I'm more of a person that needs practices that I can work on, and embodiment practices, so that I can start to shift certain things within my life, right? And do a lot of emotional work and just start shifting. So that was the big thing for me with Vipassana. So that was the first Vipassana set. I mean, for me, like, just the fact that like I no longer had thoughts of taking my own life, and haven't had, touch wood, since then, was remarkable. I don't know what it was like to be sad as other people get sad. For me, my sadness was so crushing that every day it would be like, I have to make a choice as to, you're going to get up and you're going to choose life, right? And I think people won't understand that if you've never had that kind of sadness. I have friends who are like, what does that mean? Like, I've never been that sad before. I don't have that kind of sadness, They won't understand. But those of us that have struggled with depression know what it's like. We know that empty feeling, that feeling like this is never going to end. What am I supposed to do? Where you just lose all hope, where everything looks dark. And that has never happened to me since Vipassana, since my first Vipassana sit. Now I know that that's not everybody's experience with Vipassana, right? And I don't want to build up this fairy tale for people. I know that there are people that have gone to Vipassana and still struggle with mental health and still struggle with depression. Doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong. It just means that we all have our own unique journeys and different things work for different people. The best way to explain it is karma. Jo talks about that. She tells me all the time that some people can do everything just right, but there's like your karma is your karma, right? There's certain things that you're working through from lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, right? And it may take a little longer. It may require a different practice. There's nothing wrong, you know? So, but that's my unique experience with Vipassana. I then continued to do Vipassana sits, and then I did there was also a time when I stayed at the center here in Cape Town. So I've done a sit at, was it in Seattle? I want to say it's in Washington State, right? Which is in Seattle, but like in Washington State, which was beautiful. The center, it's like so insane. It was so surreal. Like you're sitting and you can literally see the Rocky Mountains. It's right at the base of the Rocky Mountains, which for me was crazy. I'm always so grateful for the experiences that I've had on my journey and on my journeys, should I say, and on my travels, because I can truly say, wow, I've spent time just like reveling at the Rocky Mountains and watching the Rocky Mountains, right? And I remember at the time just being like, oh my God, I used to read about the Rocky Mountains and I used to dream about being able to see this, and now I get to see it, right? So I did a sit at Washington State in the US. This was right after sitting in Massachusetts. And then I did another sit here at Dhammapataka. And most of my sits have been here in Worcester at Dhammapataka. Love the center. You also get to see the Heidelberg Mountains, just beautiful. I would say every Vipassana center is just stunning, right? It is just beautiful. And the food, oh my gosh, the food, the food is so good, you guys. Obviously, it's vegetarian or vegan. So I'm vegan, so it's vegan and vegetarian options. So it's really, really amazing. So I came in 2014. I did a full 30 days here, and I did a sit. What did I do? I did a serve, sit, serve, right? So that means for 10 days I served, 10 days I did a sit, 10 days I did a serve again. And this is really important, the idea of serving at Vipassana, because everything at Vipassana is free. I should have started by saying that, right? So you do 10 days at a center and it is totally free. You don't have to pay anything. At the end of your sit, they will ask if you want to donate. But the only way to donate in Vipassana is to first experience Vipassana, right? Is to first sit for 10 days and have an experience of what Vipassana is like. And then you can donate. But also, Vipassana runs on servers. So once you've had a sit, you go back and you serve, right? Which means that you help clean the center, you cook every day for the people that are sitting, you are helping clean the center, you may even help with the coordination of everything and be a course coordinator, which I've done as well, which is you make sure that everybody gets to sit in a particular place when they come and they sit at Vipassana. So it's really, really a great experience also to serve. And I love serving, right? Because it's giving back. And for me, what I've seen Vipassana do for my life, when I have time, I love going to the center, or any center basically. I've done it in Sheldon, Massachusetts, right, where I go, and I also help out there, because I feel like every time I went to Vipassana in a really bad state. I couldn't even afford a single thing. I couldn't afford anything apart from just food at the time, food and rent. And so I couldn't afford to pay, I took my last monies to get on a train to go to Sheldon, Mass, and to get a cab to get to Vipassana, and then to get a cab back and get a train back, right? So I just took the last little bit of my money to be able to go and come back. And for me to be able to help others that are also in that situation is very, very important. I also deeply appreciate the fact that Vipassana has always been free and available for people. But I'm also a big believer in giving back. I can't even explain to people how, like, when I have served at Vipassana and when I've given in terms of cash at Vipassana, how much has come back to me in my life, It has been one of the most remarkable experiences of my life, So when you see me talking about serving at Vipassana, going to Vipassana, giving back, that's why. It's for all the reasons, right? But then I went recently again. So I'm just mentioning I guess my most memorable sits. There have been many sits, but like some of, and I'm like, actually, when I think about it now, there's more than 6 sits, but whatever, right? I don't keep track of anything. So when I went to this particular sit, it was in November 2023. So it was from the 22nd of November to the 3rd of December 2023. This one was very, very intense, right? Really one of the most intensest, intensest, is that a word? Okay, one of the most intense sits at Vipassana that I've ever had, right? The energy was a very hectic and very, very dense. Everyone that came to this particular sit, I feel, was really, really serious and very, very intense, right? It was heavy. The energy was heavy. Even the teacher said that this was one of her most intense sits that she had experienced. The energy was very, very dense. And there were some healers in that space. So they had some pretty intense experiences, right? So really felt the healers as well. And I think that they were holding us down and holding the energy for us as well. I'm also a healer, right? And I could feel it. I was like, oh my gosh. By day 7 of the Vipassana of this particular sit, I felt sick. First time I ever felt sick, right? I was sneezing, I was sniffling. I think it started on day 6. I was sneezing, I was sniffling, everything. I could feel though on day 3 that I was exhausted. Every sensation in my body was one of just exhaustion. And I could feel that like I had pushed myself beyond in terms of exhaustion, right? In 2023. And so by day 6, I think I was not at all shocked that I started sneezing and sniffling and, just falling sick all the time. I was almost feverish most days. I had like a low grade feeling of being like cold and feverish at times. But by day 10, I was still very, very sick. By the time we got out of Vipassana, I was still like, I had to get home and just lie down and sleep. And it was also the stuff that was coming out. It was just seeing how like I had pushed my body beyond its limits in 2023 and 2022, that everything that like what I had done in 2023 is I had literally abandoned the core of my teachings and my values, which was that everything starts from the inside out, doing the inner work first and then taking action. I did do the inner work, but I wasn't from the space that I usually do my inner work. It was from the space of I'm just kind of doing the inner work, but not really putting it as the thing that I'm working first from what is happening within and then taking action. And what I saw when that happened and when I was sitting in Vipassana, I could see how I was doing everything from a space of push and push and push, and how it had absolutely exhausted me. I think actually when I went to Vipassana, I didn't know it, but I was on the brink of burnout this time around, right? And so I was exhausted. And I remember, I can tell the difference now, right? Because last year, I think everything I was doing was from a place of like, I'm so tired. I'm pushing, but I'm so tired, And that's the space that I was in. That's the action that I was taking. That's where I was starting off from. It was really, really crazy. And I didn't realize it. So I feel like Vipassana made me stop dead in my tracks and reevaluate who I was and where from the space from which I was taking action, right? And that was really, really powerful for me and so important. So I was willing to acknowledge to myself, wow, okay, I think that I'm behaving from a space of fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to lose my company, fear of, oh my gosh, things are falling apart, fear of what is happening in the stock file, everything is falling apart in the stock file, fear that like, oh my gosh, I've been dealing with this public shaming, what has it done to my brand, etc. When I got to Vipassana, I once again, by the end of Vipassana, found that core and that center and that inner peace again. I was able, which again, like I said, it never left me. It was just like remembering it. And it was just like, oh, there you are. So I walked out of Vipassana and I made the decision that I'm not even going to bother writing another blog post, that I had enough blog posts until mid-February 2024, right? And that I would not do a podcast episode until February. So I would give myself December and January to sleep. And then in February, if my spirit felt like it, I would start recording podcasts. And my spirit did feel like it, right? And that the podcast would start going out again in March, and that I would now be more consistent in the Money Magic podcast in March. And then I would give myself the space and the time to figure out everything for the stock file, to work with the legal stuff, to figure out everything in terms of getting back on track with everything in the business for Wealthy Money in terms of revenue and setting revenue goals, but that I would give myself time to prioritize nothing but rest and inner work for December, January, and February, right? And that I would then start working seriously again in March. And I really, really love that I did that, because even Team Coach Nombeliso said to me a few weeks ago, Van, I just noticed that you haven't been selling anything, you haven't been doing a lot in terms of Wealthy Money, what's going on? And I was just like, I'm resting, and in that rest period, what I've been able to do is just go back to doing the inner work, really, for not as, I'm just getting it done, but as in like, regulate your nervous system, connect with what's happening, really do the work, and really connect with your emotions, your sensations in your body, all that. And when I tell you guys that I feel rested, I really mean I feel rested. I'm like, wow, I didn't realize I was running on empty. I really did not realize I was running on empty, right? And I'm so glad I went to Vipassana, because I think that I would have completely burnt out. But like now I'm just so well rested. And because of that, I'm willing to keep going and not give up, right? So I gave myself that permission to just rest. And in that, I did a lot of work around self-forgiveness. And I think that we don't talk a lot about like how often we blame ourselves for certain decisions that we make in our businesses and around money. And there's just so much where we don't forgive ourselves and we don't forgive money, right? And there's certain decisions that I feel like I didn't realize until I started to rest that I needed to forgive myself for certain things. Like I kept thinking, oh my gosh, why did I bother starting the stock file? Why did I do this to myself? Because if I hadn't started the stock file, I wouldn't have half the dramas that I have now in terms of the developers paying us back the money, all those things. And I was in my head around that. And I think part of it was I was also driving myself to distraction to make sure and blaming myself for saying, well, these men are not paying back the money, so somehow it's my fault. And I had to just breathe, and just be like, this is where I'm at. And yes, people get to see me go through this and make these mistakes, but I've also been teaching the work that I teach around money, and despite everything that's been happening, in 2023, I had 4 different legal cases that I was handling, and I still managed to write a book and continue to run my mastermind and continue to run the Money Magic course and continue to keep everything afloat and travel to Vietnam and Thailand, right? And I never ever gave myself credit for that. And I was just like, actually, I'm going to give myself credit for that and say the work works. My work works because despite everything, I didn't crumble and I haven't crumbled. Yes, I drove myself to distraction. Yes, I didn't rest as much as I usually do, but I did have the presence of mind to listen to my intuition that I should take the 10 days, go to Vipassana, allow myself to just fall apart, fall sick, and then I did take the rest, and then I went back to the work, right? So that was absolutely powerful. And what was also very interesting at this time around in Vipassana was I was also able to see how I was behaving from a place of impatience. My predominant emotion in 2023 was impatience, was this feeling that I don't want to go through what I am going through. And in Vipassana, I had this aha moment, this deep aha moment that the minute I decide that I don't want to go through what I'm going through with wealthy money, with the stock file, with anything in my life, it's because I haven't learned to surrender to the moment. That impatience that I don't want to experience the challenges. I don't want to experience the hardship, right? It's like, it left me wondering then, who in this world should experience challenges? If I'm the one that shouldn't experience challenges, then who must experience challenges and who mustn't experience challenges? Because part of being alive is that you are here to grow, to learn. Your soul chose something, and part of the challenges is that your soul is here to learn from them. And so I was so busy fighting the challenges, so busy fighting that I should not experience the challenges, that I wasn't willing to actually surrender and learn the lessons and just be with everything, to be in my body, to feel what I was feeling, to allow it to be, to give it permission to be, so that I could be transformed, so that I could truly, truly grow and become the person that I've been praying to become, that I've been meditating on becoming, that I've been wishing to become, right? And if I kept fighting and kept resisting, then all these challenges would be happening to me and not be happening for me. So I think that I learned a big thing, that impatience is always like a thing for me. is sometimes, not always, but sometimes accompanied by fear, because I want to just leave the situation. And the minute that I want to leave the situation is because I want to leave this. I don't want to feel. I'm wanting to leave the experience altogether, and I don't want to feel. That means that I'm still running from certain things, and I have not learned to just be anicca, as they say in Vipassana, or just learn to be neutral, which is to be at peace with whatever is happening, to accept what is, And I kept having the quote in my mind after a few days by Nichiren Daishonin, who is the founder of Nichiren Buddhism, and he says, suffer what there is to suffer, enjoy what there is to enjoy, and regard both joy and suffering as part of life, right? And I was like, yeah. So for me, it was like, surrender and learn your lessons. So I just started, and not even learn your lessons, but just surrender. Allow life to work with you and to work through you. Allow yourself to be changed and transformed to see what is here for you, And I had that huge aha moment, and I saw how in those moments of my impatience and my annoyance that I am going through this. Oh my God, the ego, right? I am going through this. How dare I have to go through this kind of thing, And I saw how in those moments I was so ungrateful, I didn't realize how much, I don't know what the right word is, but I guess like fortune or, what is, like, there's a word that they use in India when I was living in India that they always say, I forgot. But also, I guess like the word that I could use is grace. How much grace I had been afforded on this journey, because even as everything was happening in 2023, as everything has been happening in my life, like I had this aha moment in Vipassana, and I was just like sitting there. I think it must have been around about day 5, day 6, where I had this aha moment that, oh my gosh, I do not have any gratitude. I am so ungrateful. I've been afforded so much grace in my life, in that, like, I've had beautiful places to stay throughout. I've not had to worry about food. I've had so many friends support me. So many friends support me and hold me through my journeys, especially in 2022, 2023. I've had so much support from family. I've been given so much love. And also I've had running water. I've been able to go out. I've had weekend getaways. I've had publishers and editors hold my hands throughout, really work with me. I've had people do case studies, be willing to come on board with me. My business has continued to grow. I've been able to pay for everything in the business. It's just, yeah. So for the first time, I had this aha moment that actually, wow, I really have been afforded a lot of grace, and I have not been as grateful because all I can see is all the things that are not going well, right? And how my life has been so inconvenienced by so many events, right? But also I have not been able to see the grace of having even the money to be able to afford to juggle so many legal cases, right? To be able to show up, that I've been able to show up, and that I had my mental health. And that was a big thing for me to realize in Vipassana, that, whoa, even in the midst of all this, I am still okay in terms of my mental health. I'm still just feeling sad, as most people feel sad. I wake up every morning and I do things, and I'm not lying in bed like I used to. So there's just so much grace that was extended to me. It may not be the things that I wanted, which for me in my world was like, I was like thinking, oh my God, 2023, like if you had asked me in 2021, I would have said 2023, the business is just going to go up and up from here. Like it's only greenery and green fields and flowers and roses, etc. And then it didn't happen that way, right? I hit some really hectic roadblocks, and yet I was learning so much at such a fast pace. I learned so much, and I was also like, wow, what incredible grace that in the Stockfile, we have the Stockfile members that we have. And so I never really felt alone, and sorry. And I also have a business partner like Mizo in the Stockfile. So I'm just going to drink some water. And I also have a business partner like Mizo in the Stockfile. And when things go bad, most business partnerships fall apart, right? That's just the reality of how most things work in the world. And yet with us, that hasn't happened. We have been able to hold each other. We've been able to meditate together. We've been able to look at each other through the trauma, hold each other through so much, and actually keep going and getting closer. And there's never been any kind of blame, but just constant working towards the goal. So again, how fortunate and what incredible grace, right? So in the midst of all that, I was still like, wow, so much is happening. And I was sitting there in Vipassana, and by like day 8, day 9, I was starting to feel such deep gratitude and deep exhaustion as well, and my body was really sore, and I was really sick because I think part of it was I was purging so much, and a lot of that purging, I won't lie, was my own mind, the lack of gratitude. And it hit me, like I could feel it in my body. It's like how ungrateful I had been, and I had to sit and see that in me and just be with it and be like, wow, so little gratitude for so much that I have been given, even in the midst of all this, all these challenges, I've been given so much, and just acknowledging that. And of course, the relationships in my life, I also just saw the incredible relationships in my life, the people in my life. Wow. I mean, what can I say? The people in my life, right? Just the most incredible humans that I know. And I could just see it, and I was super grateful. So yeah, that was my Vipassana journey. And right now, as I record this in March 2024, right, I'm very grateful. And I'm working more on just becoming more aware of not just the challenges and the things that I need to go right, and my impatience with wanting things to shift because I don't want to have to experience this. I don't want to have to feel this. I'm also becoming very aware of what I've been given and what I have, and really working with that. And it is a journey because I'm not a person that naturally feels grateful. I'll be honest about that. I naturally feel excited, naturally feel pleasure and fun. I am that kind of person, but gratitude, I realized this time in Vipassana that actually that's not been my predominant emotion. And I'm still not one of those people that wakes up and does my gratitude list. for me, that's never been that important, but I am now able to see every day and recite things to myself and be like, okay, I am grateful for this and this, and just having those moments. And not everything is hunky-dory still, I'm still in the midst of everything, but I'm also not trying to run away from anything, right? As I've shared before in this book, my secondary archetype is a runaway archetype, and that is my main personality. And it's really, really interesting and can sometimes be very, very challenging, especially in moments like this. But yeah, so guys, that is my Vipassana journey. And there's so much that has happened to me because of my practice of Vipassana. But I think also because of Vipassana, I've been able to really become so self-aware. And that self-awareness has helped me understand trauma and has helped me understand how, not just how I respond to trauma, but how other people respond to trauma, and has enabled me to walk in other people's shoes at times, which has helped me craft the work that I do, especially in the Money Magic course. So if you're listening to this and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to go deeper, especially around the work on trauma, well, I've got you. But if you're listening, and I'll talk about that regarding the Money Magic course, right? So I do have this incredible course called the Money Magic course. And if you're listening to this podcast or watching it on YouTube, you can check out all the other episodes on this podcast, and you will see all the some of the guests that I've had as some of my clients, and they have shared their experiences on the Money Magic course. I created that course to help people really change their relationship with money, change their family dynamics around money, so that they can really increase their savings, pay off debt, and remain debt free, and also double their income, but also start living the life that they want. So I've been so blessed to see clients of mine change jobs and leave jobs, right? So that they can go and start their own thing, or leave jobs to go to their dream jobs. I've been blessed enough to see people work part-time, to see people start investment portfolios, to really see people craft the life of their dreams and the life that they truly desire, right? And I myself have been able to use those meditations, and I'm still using those meditations and that work to really start to shift my own relationship with money, to build my business so that I can keep traveling. I mean, while I built my business to get to $100,000 in revenue and even more in revenue over the years by traveling as I traveled, right? So it's been just like mind-blowing. So the work really works. But if you're listening to this and you're like, I really want to go to Vipassana, I've got you. I'm going to put, just like with the link to the Money Magic course, I will put the link to the Money Magic course in the comment section, in the description of this podcast. But also feel free to message me. And if you want to hop on a discovery call, I'm also doing one-on-one coaching again. My one-on-one coaching is open. I'm really, really focused on working with people that just want to have fun making money, want to save money in a really fun manner, right? So hit me up and just send me a message. I'll again put a link to book a discovery call with me. It's a free discovery call, so we can have a conversation. And if you are interested in Vipassana, you can go to dhamma.org. So Dhamma, DHAMMA.org. And it will show you all the various Vipassana centers around the world. Again, Vipassana is free for anyone around the world. But if you're going to do Vipassana, I'm going to give you the same advice that I got that changed my life. I would say do this and follow the instructions. Do the 10 days of meditation. Meditate as often as you can. And every time period for meditation, go to the hall and meditate. take the vow of silence very seriously. Don't try to talk. Don't do sign language. They don't allow that. Don't write. Don't take a journal because there's no reading, there's no writing. Don't have your cell phone because that's also not allowed. Don't take a laptop because that's also not allowed. Just go there to be by yourself for 10 days and just do the work, right? And on the website, dharma.org, you can choose whichever center, whatever country you're in. Click on the country, it will send you to the center, to the website of whatever country you are in, or for the center in whatever country you're in. Then you just book. It's really that simple. Fill in your details, book your spot, and then they'll let you know if you've been accepted to do a sit. Go do your sit, and I hope that your life transforms. Again, my work is around healing ancestral money trauma, right? And if you would like to go deeper in that work, especially using the Money Magic course, really hit me up. Thank you so much, you guys. Have a fantastic day further. And I cannot wait to see you in the next Money Magic podcast. Namaste.